The evening sun bathed the city in shades of gold as Emma adjusted the silverware on the long dining table, her hands trembling slightly. Tonight was supposed to be perfect, a simple family dinner to bring her world and David's together before their wedding. The scent of rosemary chicken filled the air, and laughter echoed faintly from the living room, but Emma's heart wouldn't calm. She had spent weeks preparing for this night, polishing every glass, planning every word, yet something about the atmosphere felt heavy, almost foreboding. David, charming as ever, moved between guests, flashing that effortless smile that once melted her heart. His parents sat stiffly on the couch, whispering judgments beneath polite smiles. Her own mother, nervous but hopeful, kept refilling glasses to avoid awkward silence. Emma could sense the tension between the two families, the difference in status, expectations, and hidden pride, stretching like a crack under the surface of a polished floor. Then, as her brother made a light-hearted toast to Emma's happily ever after, someone mentioned Ryan. Her chest tightened. The name hung in the air like smoke. David's smile faltered for the first time that night. His mother's eyes narrowed. Emma forced a soft laugh, brushing it off, but she could feel the shift, the warmth fading from the room. Ryan had been her first love. Her childhood best friend, the one who'd known her soul before the world, hardened her. She'd never hidden that, but David hated even the mention of him. As dinner plates clinked and forced laughter resumed, Emma realized that no amount of planning could prevent what was coming. Tonight wouldn't just bring families together, it would quietly begin to tear them apart. Ryan Carter had always been the shadow that lingered in Emma's story, not haunting, but unforgettable. They had grown up in the same neighborhood, sharing secrets beneath old oak trees and dreams under starry skies. When her father died, Ryan was the first to hold her as she cried. He wasn't just he was the piece of her past that still whispered comfort when the world turned cold. But to David and his family, Ryan was nothing more than a threat, a reminder that Emma's heart once belonged elsewhere. Margaret, David's mother, had made her disapproval clear from the start. A woman shouldn't keep her past so close, she'd once said, her tone sharp as a knife wrapped in silk. David never repeated his mother's words, but Emma could see the same doubt flickering in his eyes whenever Ryan's name appeared on her phone. The truth was, Ryan had never truly left her life. He still called on birthdays, still sent flowers on anniversaries of her father's death, still knew how to make her laugh when no one else could. Their bond wasn't romantic anymore, at least, that's what Emma told herself, but it was unbreakable. One afternoon, Ryan stopped by her art studio with coffee and a quiet smile. "You look tired," he said softly. "David, keeping you busy?" Emma laughed, but the sound felt hollow. She didn't notice David's car parked across the street, or how he watched them through the windshield, jaw clenched, hands gripping the steering wheel. That night, David didn't speak a word at dinner, and though Emma tried to reach for his hand, he pulled away gently. The ghost from her past had returned, and it was already unsettling the peace, she thought, she'd built. The evening unfolded with deceptive perfection. Candles flickered softly across the long mahogany table, casting golden halos on smiling faces. The clinking of cutlery, the scent of roasted garlic and thyme, and the gentle hum of conversation filled the air. For a moment, Emma allowed herself to believe that this night, this fragile illusion of unity, might actually hold. David raised his glass, offering a toast that made everyone laugh. His charm wrapped around the room like silk, smooth and effortless. "To love that conquers everything," he said, looking directly at Emma. Her cheeks flushed, and she smiled, feeling the eyes of both families fixed on her. For the first time that evening, she felt hope. Maybe the tension between her and Margaret was softening. Maybe her mother's nervous laughter was just that, nerves. The music played softly in the background, and the glow of candlelight reflected in David's confident grin. But perfection never lasts. It started with an innocent question from David's father, his tone light but probing. "So, Emma, your brother mentioned someone named Ryan earlier, old friend of yours." The air seemed to freeze. The laughter died abruptly. Emma's hand trembled slightly as she set her glass down. "Yes," she said carefully. Ryan and I grew up together. He's part of my life. David's expression hardened, the warmth draining from his eyes. His mother's lips curved into a knowing smirk, subtle but cruel. The silence stretched uncomfortably before someone forced a cough, and the conversation limped on. Brittle and forced. Inside, Emma's heart raced. She could feel the walls closing in, the old fears stirring. The tension between her love for David and the truth of who she was. She knew the night had only just begun, and the storm was coming. The tension in the room had become unbearable, a fragile glass ready to shatter. The clinking of cutlery had stopped. Every conversation had withered into silence. Emma could feel every heartbeat pounding in her chest, echoing louder than the music that still played faintly in the background. David set down his wine glass slowly, his eyes locked on her. "So tell me, Emma," he said, voice deceptively calm, "is Ryan still a part of your life?" The words cut through the air like a blade. Every head turned, even the flickering candle seemed to pause. Emma swallowed hard. She could feel her mother's worried gaze and Margaret's judgmental stare pressing down on her. Her instinct told her to deflect, to smooth things over, but something inside her refused. She was tired of pretending, tired of walking on eggshells to make everyone else comfortable. "Yes," she said finally, her voice trembling but firm. "Ryan is part of my life. He's someone who's seen me at my worst, who's never turned away. That doesn't just disappear." David's jaw tightened. "You're talking about your ex, Emma. How do you expect me to live with that?" Her eyes met his, steady now, clear, unflinching. "Because that's who I am," she whispered. Then louder, her voice steady and ringing across the table, she declared, "My ex will always be part of my life. If you don't like it, maybe you never really knew me." The room erupted. Margaret gasped. David stood, knocking over his chair. Someone shouted. Someone cried. The clatter of breaking glass filled the silence that followed. Emma stood there frozen, her heart both breaking and freeing itself at once. In that moment, she knew nothing about her life would ever be the same again. The night ended in shattered glass and broken hearts. When the last guest left, silence settled over the house like smoke after a fire. Emma stood in the dining room, staring at the empty chairs, wine stains on the tablecloth, and the shattered plate near her feet, a perfect symbol of what her life had become. David was gone. He hadn't said a word before he left, only slammed the door so hard, the lights flickered, morning brought no peace. The house was eerily quiet, yet her mind screamed. She walked into the kitchen and saw a folded note on the counter. David's handwriting sharp and cold. "You chose him over us." Her hands trembled as she read it again and again, the words cutting deeper each time. Chose him. That wasn't what she had done, was it? But in David's eyes, her truth had been a betrayal. By noon, the whispers had already started. Mutual friends texted awkward apologies. Someone had filmed part of the dinner argument. Now it was circulating online, the dinner meltdown, they called it. Comments flooded in, strangers picking sides. Some called her brave, others called her cruel. Ryan showed up that evening, his face etched with guilt. "I shouldn't have come that day," he murmured, eyes lowered. "I never meant to cause this." Emma shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You didn't cause it, Ryan. The truth did." For the first time in years, she felt utterly alone, not because everyone had left her, but because she was finally standing in the wreckage of what had been built on lies. The storm had passed, but in its wake, it left her stripped, trembling, and forced to face who she really was. Days turned into weeks, and the silence between Emma and David grew heavier, colder. She moved through the house like a ghost, cleaning rooms that still smelled like him, folding clothes that no longer belonged to her world. Then one rainy afternoon, while packing away old boxes from her studio, she found something that stopped her breath. A small wooden chest, its edges worn, its lock rusted with time. Inside were a few photos, a dried rose, and a bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. Her hands trembled as she untied it. The handwriting on the envelopes was unmistakable. Ryan's letters dated years ago, from the time just after their breakup. She sank to the floor and began to read. Each page was a whisper from the past, his apologies, his longing, his confusion over how their love had fallen apart so suddenly. But then the tone changed. In one letter, Ryan confessed something she never knew, that David had been involved in his downfall. Ryan had trusted David with a business proposal, a dream project they planned to start together, but before it launched, David had stolen the concept, registered it under his name, and left Ryan ruined. Emma's heart pounded. She read the next letter, and the next, each one revealing more of David's deception. One even hinted that David had deliberately pushed Ryan away from her, feeding him lies so that she would turn against him. By the time she finished, tears had blurred the ink. The man she was supposed to marry, the one who accused her of betrayal, had built his life on lies. The realization burned through her like fire. The truth wasn't just painful, it was devastating. Everything she believed in had been built on betrayal. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days, as if the sky itself mourned with her. Emma sat in her car outside Ryan's apartment, gripping the letters so tightly they were wrinkled and damp from her tears. She had read them a dozen times, but her heart still refused to believe. Finally, she gathered her courage and climbed the narrow staircase, each step echoing like a countdown to the truth. Ryan opened the door, his expression a mix of surprise and guilt. "Emma," he said softly, "I was going to tell you, why didn't you?" Her voice cracked, anger and heartbreak warring inside her. She threw the letters onto his coffee table. "You wrote all this years ago. You knew David betrayed you, and you said nothing while I planned a life with him." Ryan ran a hand through his hair, his jaw tightening. "I tried to protect you," he said. "You were happy, and I didn't want to destroy that. David took everything from me, my career, my reputation, and you. But I couldn't be the reason you lost your peace to." Emma stared at him, her breath shaking. The puzzle pieces of her life suddenly aligned in a cruel, perfect picture. David's overprotectiveness, his discomfort whenever Ryan's name came up, it all made sense now. "He didn't just take your work," she whispered. "He took my choice." Ryan nodded, eyes filled with sorrow. "He wanted to erase me from your life. And he almost did." Emma turned toward the rain-soaked window, her reflection blurred and trembling. The man she had defended, loved, and nearly married had built his love on deceit. Her heart broke, not for losing him, but for realizing she never truly had him at all. In that moment, her heartbreak began to harden into resolve. Emma had rehearsed the confrontation 1,000 times in her mind, yet, as she stood outside David's office tower, her hands still trembled. The rain had stopped, but the sky hung heavy and gray, mirroring the storm inside her. She clutched the envelope of Ryan's letters to her chest, the truth that would finally end the lies. Inside, David's assistant looked startled when Emma walked in unannounced. "He's in a meeting," she stammered, but Emma's eyes were steady, cold. "He'll want to see me," she said, and pushed open the door. David looked up from behind his polished desk, all confidence and charm. "Emma," he began, forcing a smile. "If this is about the dinner, it's not," she interrupted sharply, tossing the letters onto his desk. "It's about what you did to Ryan, and to me." For a moment, he didn't move. Then he leaned back, his tone smooth but defensive. "Ryan has always exaggerated things. You know how he is desperate, jealous. Stop lying," she snapped, her voice breaking. "I read everything. The business, the betrayal, how you ruined him, and used me to cover your guilt." The mask cracked. His confident posture faltered, eyes darting toward the letters, as if they might burst into flames. "You don't understand," he whispered. "I did it for us. I couldn't lose you to him." Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but her voice remained steady. "You never had me, David. You only owned the illusion you built." He stood, reaching for her, but she stepped back. The office felt colder now, sterile and empty, just like his love. Without another word, Emma turned and walked away, leaving behind not just the man who betrayed her, but the woman who once believed him. The autumn air carried the scent of rain and fading leaves as Emma walked toward the small cafe by the pier, the place where everything had once begun. Ryan was already there, sitting by the window, a half-empty cup of coffee beside him. When he saw her, he smiled faintly, though his eyes revealed a quiet sadness. Neither spoke for a moment. The silence between them wasn't awkward this time. It was heavy with things both had already said in other ways. Emma sat down, folding her hands together. "I read the last of your letters," she said softly. "They broke me, but they also saved me." Ryan looked away, his voice low. "I never wanted to hurt you, Emma. I just wanted you to know the truth, even if it cost me everything." She reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "You gave me something no one else ever did, honesty. But I can't go back, Ryan. Not to the past, not to who we were. I need to find myself before I can belong to anyone again." Ryan nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "I knew you'd say that," he whispered. "And it's okay. Maybe that's what love really is, wanting someone to be free, even if it means losing them." They sat together in silence, watching the grey waves crash against the pier. When Emma finally stood to leave, Ryan rose too, his gaze tender, unspoken words trembling on his lips. "Goodbye, Ryan," she said, her voice steady yet fragile. "Goodbye, Emma," he replied. "Take care of your heart. It deserves peace." As she walked away, the wind swept her hair across her face, carrying with it the last echoes of a love that had finally learned to let go. A year had passed since that unforgettable night, a year of heartbreak, healing, and rediscovery. The house that once echoed with silence now felt alive again. Warm light spilled from the windows, carrying the sound of soft laughter and clinking dishes. Emma stood in her kitchen, arranging flowers on the dining table, not out of pressure, but from peace. This dinner wasn't about proving herself or winning anyone's approval. It was simply a celebration of how far she'd come. Her mother smiled as she stirred soup on the stove. "You seem lighter, sweetheart," she said softly. Emma nodded, her heart full. "Because I finally stopped carrying what wasn't mine." The doorbell rang. It was Ryan, holding a bottle of wine and that familiar, gentle smile. He had moved on to, now working abroad, his life full again. Their friendship had evolved into something quiet and beautiful. Respect without expectation. They shared an embrace, the kind that said everything words couldn't dot. As dinner began, conversation flowed easily. The air was filled with warmth, not tension. But just as Emma lifted her glass to toast, the door opened once more. David stood there, hesitant, older, his confidence replaced by remorse. The room fell silent. "Emma," he said quietly, eyes glistening. "I came to say, I'm sorry for everything." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Emma smiled, kind but firm. "I've learned that love isn't about possession, David. It's about peace, and I finally have mine." Tears shimmered in his eyes, but she turned away gently, walking toward her family and friends. Laughter resumed, soft music played, and the night carried on. For the first time in years, Emma wasn't surviving a storm, she was living in the calm after it. Sometimes, betrayal is the only door that leads to truth. Sometimes love must break before it can heal. And sometimes, walking away isn't losing, it's liberation.